You know, with the benefit of hindsight.
Although it's exciting to watch our heroes win all the time, am I the only one who likes to see them lose? Not because I'm secretly a villain or anything like that, at least you can't prove anything, but more so I just like to see what heroes do when faced with epic failure. Because what makes a hero to me is not all the victories you get, but rather what you do when faced with extreme challenges. Today's video is all about the biggest failures in the MCU. How did each of these entries change the shape of their respective movies? How did our heroes respond? And what would have happened if things went differently? Well, let's discuss all that right now.
If you consider failure experience.
I consider experience.
Of course, Star-Lord's actions on Titan was going to be the first entry to discuss. I think this is an epic fail on practically every level. Let's recap. Our heroes were ready to surprise Thanos on Titan by keeping him off guard. Apparently, this was mostly Star-Lord's plan, and I've always wondered just how much planning they actually did. Like, did Star-Lord literally say, "Hey, you magic guy, make a portal so this insect kid can jump through constantly in order to kick him in the face a few times?" We'll probably never know that, but we do know how things turn out. Our heroes actually kick butt. Thanks to the combined efforts of everyone, they're able to subdue Thanos while Mantis keeps the Mad Titan sedated, and the group attempts to pull the Infinity Gauntlet off of him. But then Quill learns that Gamora is gone, and despite Tony's attempts to keep Quill calm, Star-Lord attacks Thanos, causing him to break free of the mind control and effectively beat everyone. And there's so many things that hurt about this failure. Yes, Quill just lost the woman he loved, but if he hadn't freaked out and lost his cool, then our heroes would have won. Because it stings to see that Spider-Man was literally 2 seconds away from successfully getting the gauntlet off of Thanos before things went sideways. It's a bad failure, but also I consider it one of the worst because seemingly the Sorcerer Supreme, who just a little bit earlier was shown to use his magic portals to dismember arms from bad guys, didn't think of this again when he had every opportunity to. Yeah, you could say that Doctor Strange knew it had to happen this way, but I don't know. It just seems like he forgot how to use his powers effectively. At the end of Infinity War, Thanos wins, and there's always a lot of debate over just who exactly is at fault here. And as much as it's clear that Star-Lord is a huge reason that they lost, we also have to talk about Thor. The God of Thunder lost practically everything in Infinity War, and he vowed vengeance against Thanos. He spent the whole movie off on a side quest to get a Thanos-destroying weapon, and succeeded. He was in a prime position at the end of the movie to stop the Mad Titan once and for all. But when the time came for the final blow, Thor wanted to gloat a bit. He threw the axe into Thanos' chest and then wanted to make sure Thanos had enough life in him to see that it was Thor getting his revenge. If Thor hadn't wanted to get that cool end-of-movie hero quip that makes the audience cheer, then things would be vastly different. So it's really right between Star-Lord and Thor on who ultimately caused the snap. But what if Thor had gone for the head immediately? I think that would have caused its own series of problems. The Infinity Gauntlet and all the stones would have just been right there for the taking. And can you imagine what someone like Tony Stark would have wanted to do with a gauntlet with near infinite power? Maybe it's good these failures happened, I'm just saying. As fun as Jake Gyllenhaal was in the Quentin Beck role, I kind of felt like this whole plot point was poorly handled. When it was announced that Mysterio would be in the movie, but all the trailers and interviews suggested that Mysterio was some interdimensional superhero, I think everyone was like, no. We knew Mysterio was the master of illusion and knew that the twist would be that he's actually a bad guy. I was actually kind of hoping the movie would do a double twist and play with audience expectations. Like, since we expected Mysterio to be a bad guy, how interesting would it be if he actually was who he said he was? Anyways, that didn't happen, and we knew Peter was being manipulated from the start, which is why watching the failure of Peter giving the EDITH glasses to Beck is so hard to watch. I couldn't be the only one who was screaming at the screen for Peter to not hand over these incredibly powerful glasses to someone who is clearly a bad guy, but hey, Peter's only a teenager, right? Of course he's going to fail like this from time to time. And this is a failure that just keeps on expanding. Like, if Peter hadn't given Beck the glasses, then there's a chance his identity wouldn't have been revealed to the world. Then the events of No Way Home might have happened differently, and okay, never mind. We needed No Way Home to happen, so I guess this epic failure was necessary. I understand that having your heroes create problems in order for them to fix them provides that juicy character drama we all love, but it's just such a bummer that Tony and Bruce created Ultron. Like, this was a big fail from the start. Yes, Tony was feeling paranoid about the threat of some gigantic space threat and wanted to do whatever he could in order to protect the Earth, but come on, dude. An advanced AI program? Tony is totally hip with every pop culture reference, and even he didn't consider the fact that his AI program would go rogue and want to destroy humanity. That's what AI does in like every movie ever. And why I consider this one of the top failures is because of how quick it happens. There's no grace period of Ultron doing what he was designed for and then slowly becoming corrupted. Nope, he boots up, takes one look at the internet, and decides that humanity needs to be completely destroyed. That's true failure on Tony and Bruce's part right there. And this failure led to the things like the Sokovia Accords, which leads to Civil War, which allowed the Avengers to be disbanded, and Thanos to swoop in and wipe out half the universe. So, yeah, don't create sentient artificial intelligence. It never goes well. Being a superhero means always risking everything to save one life. But what happens when that one life is a synthetic android brought to life by a space rock? That gets into some murky territory right there. Okay, I know this one will probably be a little controversial, but I consider it a failure that Steve Rogers and the Avengers didn't destroy the Mind Stone and subsequently Vision when they had the chance. Yes, Cap is right in that they shouldn't trade lives, and it ultimately, morally, was the correct choice. But it still resulted in Thanos wiping out half the universe for 5 years. If they had destroyed it right there, they would have eliminated any possibility that Thanos could have won. Yes, you might say that if they had destroyed the Mind Stone right away, then Thanos would have just used the Time Stone to turn back time and get it, but who's to say that Doctor Strange would have given the Time Stone away if he knew the Mind Stone was destroyed? Yeah, that gets into a lot of what ifs, but I think it's interesting to think about. But the fact that Vision winds up destroyed anyways, twice no less, makes me think they probably should have just destroyed it when they had the chance. Black Panther not only gave us an epic solo adventure and opened the doors to Wakanda, but also gave us one of the best villains in the entire MCU. Eric Killmonger had a perfect balance of charisma, intensity, and tragedy to him that made him so compelling to watch. He had a very specific plan to enact in order to cause a mass uprising across the world, and that all hinged on T'Challa's failure to beat him when he challenged to be king. Killmonger knew that he had to arrive in Wakanda with the gift of Claw's body in order to get to the throne room. Then he knew that he could challenge to be king, but there's no way to know for certain that he would have beaten T'Challa in their fight. T'Challa could have effectively ended the movie right here if he bested Killmonger, and yet he failed to do so. And this failure can't be chalked up to any excuses. Like, T'Challa wasn't distracted, he wasn't poisoned, he wasn't injured. No, he lost fair and square. He just ended up getting lucky that Killmonger did the classic bad guy move of throwing the hero off a waterfall. Come on, Killmonger, waterfalls are notoriously really easy to survive. You know, especially if your name is in the title of the movie. Unless you're Spider-Man, most Marvel heroes have a pretty great track record of catching their loved ones while they fall from a great height. But that almost wasn't the case in Iron Man 3. Tony was up against his greatest enemy, the Mandarin. Oh, sorry, no, not the Mandarin. I meant the man that Tony was mean to once on New Year's. And the final battle between the two of them almost caused Tony to lose his true love. Pepper Potts has always been the person to ground Tony Stark and keep him from indulging in his worst impulses. She's basically his moral compass, so that makes it all the more tragic that he fails to save her in Iron Man 3. As she hangs precariously from scaffolding, Tony promises that he'll catch her, but then watches as she slips through his fingers and she falls into a gigantic fire pit. Ouch. It's just lucky that the extremist virus that was inside Pepper at the time protected her from her plunge, but Tony didn't know that. He just witnessed the woman he loves most perish after promising to save her. And you know, it never sat well with me that Tony makes a quip about performance issues so soon after Pepper seemingly plunges to her fiery demise. But you could argue that he was just saying that to distract Killian. As soon as we found out in WandaVision that it was in fact Wanda who had created the suburban nightmare in order to not only be with Vision, but also have 2 children, I was thinking the show would end with Vision, Wiccan, and Speed all being merged with actual reality so that they could keep on living. But surprisingly, that wasn't the case. Sure, White Vision now has all of Vision's memories, and Wanda's children seem to be alive in some other universe, but those are all teases for future projects. At the end of WandaVision, Wanda kind of fails. Sure, she processes her grief and starts to unlock her true potential, but she really doesn't get what she wants. I just didn't want to see Vision get destroyed for like the 45th time in the MCU, and yet, there we all were watching the lovable synthezoid we've come to know and adore in those 8 episodes not make it out technically alive. I just wanted Wanda to have some sort of win at the end after everything she suffered. Though I guess everyone's sort of being okay with the fact that Wanda warped the mind of an entire town and trapped those people in a nightmare is a solid win on its own. I love the first Ant-Man movie for its humor and the fact that it's basically a superhero heist film. But I always feel weird thinking about how the whole big heist is really just a failure from the start. We spend the whole runtime with Scott as he trains to be Ant-Man and then plans with Hank and Hope away to steal the PIM technology from underneath Darren Cross's nose. But at the end, after all the setup and the breaking in and the heisting, it's revealed that Cross actually knew the entire time that the group would be attempting to steal the technology and planned accordingly. In fact, he wanted Scott to get that far so that he could sell more Ant-Man technology to Hydra. There's no clever heist twist where our good guys turned out to be smarter. They were just overall lucky that Cross didn't think about Ant-Man using the technology to break out of the cage he was in. Come on, Cross. I wanted to mention Loki on this list because he probably has the biggest fail out of anyone here. He had the plan to tear the Avengers apart, but really all that accomplished was bringing the Avengers together. As Tony Stark points out, it wasn't a great plan. Imagine if you're a bad guy who wants to take over the world and you know there's a team that could stop you, so you try to break them apart only for your plan to be the thing that unites them into Earth's mightiest heroes? What? Like, Loki, I think the Mind Stone messed with your head a bit too much here. But again, this is only a failure for the villains because it's great from an audience perspective. I can't say I'm that mad at how things turned out. I mean, if Loki wanted to try to destroy teams like the Dark Avengers or the Young Avengers next using the same strategy, I wouldn't necessarily be that upset, would you? I only mentioned one villain on this list with Loki, but besides him, what other villains do you think failed the hardest? I know it's hard to beat the guy who literally formed the Avengers, but there are some other good candidates. Justin Hammer, Malekith, Ego the Living Planet, definitely a lot of failure to choose from.